All right. Well, thank you all for joining me today. I'm very excited to share a little bit about my research with you. And as Dr. Winter said, my name is Jade Herman. I'm currently the Chief of Staff at the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology. It was a small science and engineering school out in western South Dakota, and also currently where I'm zooming in from today. So, as you'll see on the screen here, my dissertation was titled Exploring Co-Curricular Leadership Development Experiences of Undergraduate Students at South Dakota Mines. Just going to give you a quick rundown of what I'm going to cover today. We'll first talk about the role of leadership in my study. I'll introduce the Mines Advantage program that we have here on our campus, review the purpose, aim, and structure of my study, give a very brief overview of some relevant literature, discuss my research design and methodology, and I'm going to spend the most amount of time covering my results and findings and recommendations at the end. Again, I'm going to be covering a lot of information in a short amount of time, so if anyone has any questions or wants me to elaborate on anything, please feel free to ask me when I am done running through all of my slides here. So, the role of leadership in the study. Northhouse defined leadership as the process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. Historically speaking, engineering universities have been ineffective in developing the leadership skills of our students, despite the fact that the current global market and industry really demands that engineers balance those soft skills with their technical skills. And those are really important for engineers to advance in their fields, but also provide that solid foundation for students to learn how to work in that increasingly diverse global market as well. So to kind of touch on those, the university here established the Mines Advantage program about a decade ago, and it was really created to foster that professional development and personal growth of our students. And they do so by providing activities that fall under these 6 core competency areas: the career preparation, cultural and global inclusion, community involvement, personal development and ethics, leadership and teamwork, and communication. And the full curriculum requires the students to basically submit their reflections after they complete various activities underneath each one of those competency areas. So the purpose and aim of my study was really just to do a case study on the Mines Advantage program and evaluate its effectiveness in aiding that professional development of our undergraduate students here at Mines. So I really explored their perceptions and sought to understand what they thought was most educational about the program and what could really be enhanced to better fit their needs. Excuse me. So the research questions that I developed, the primary question is, how effective do undergraduate STEM students perceive the Mines Advantage Leadership Development Program at South Dakota Mines? And the 2 sub-questions that I had under there were really, what components did they find most educational, and were there aspects that could be improved to better develop their leadership skills? Again, very brief overview of some relevant literature here. Engineering leadership really demands that individuals have the skills to facilitate quality projects, encourage efficient teamwork, and provide innovative strategies needed to be competitive in industry. When they're leading projects, they have to be able to adequately assess the risk, take initiative to develop strategic plans, monitor design processes, mediate conflicts amongst their team members, and build that social and moral authority as well. And oftentimes STEM professionals struggle transitioning from being that technical expert to leadership positions, which obviously contributes to the overall success of their organizations as well. Now, ABET, which is the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology, that's the accrediting body for our academic programs, really recognizes the importance of those professional skills and outlines many of the competencies in their accreditation process that overlap with the Mines Advantage competencies too. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but you'll see several on here that are, pretty well aligned with the Mines Advantage program as well. So there's really 2 ways that universities can provide that leadership development to students. The first way is infusing it into its formal curriculum. When you're integrating that leadership development into the curriculum, it increases the employability of our graduates and ensures their future success in STEM, while also positively impacting the economy and the company's level of success. Now, a few examples where this has been really successful at other universities is University of Tennessee has a minor in engineering communication. Penn State has an engineering leadership development minor. Austin College has the STEM teaching and research leadership program. State University at New York at Buffalo, technical communication program. And then Purdue University has a leadership policy and change in STEM education graduate level course. And again, these examples have all noted very positive outcomes in their student participants. So the second way universities can provide that leadership development to its students is through programming offered outside of the classroom. And high quality student development programs really engage a diverse student body in those experiential learning opportunities. So many of the examples that I've listed here, like the EPICS program at Purdue, EPICS stands for Engineering Projects and Community Service, and we actually have an EPICS program here at Mines as well. The Preparation in STEM Leadership program at Rutgers University, the Gateway Science Workshop at Northwestern University, and the Institute for Leadership Education at the University of Toronto. Also the Engineering Leadership program at Iowa State University. And again, these programs have all had very positive outcomes for their student participants as well. And many of them kind of touch on the same core areas that Mines Advantage aims to hit as well, but they might not have them equally weighted, or they might just be focusing on one of those core competency areas instead of having that whole umbrella over them. So for my dissertation, I chose to follow a qualitative research method. I selected an intrinsic case study format specifically because it focused on program evaluation. And then I added some phenomenological elements as well, really just to develop that comprehensive understanding of the students' shared experiences in the Mines Advantage program. And I did include a little bit of quantitative data, really just to provide that contextual information, but I wouldn't consider this a mixed methods design by any means. So for my sample, my initial goal was to interview 10 to 20 students or until saturation was reached. And I actually hit that at about 8 students, but I had already had 10 interviews scheduled. So I finished those just to round out the sample. And I utilized a purposeful sampling method to make sure that, first off, that females were evenly represented in the sample because they are severely outnumbered on our campus here in the STEM fields as general as well. But I also wanted to make sure that we had a variety of different degrees represented in my sample. We have 20 undergraduate degrees, most of them being engineering, but I also wanted to include some of the science and math students as well. And then lastly, I wanted to make sure that the students also completed at least one internship in their respective fields prior to being interviewed, specifically so they'd have some of that industry experience that they could speak to. However, all of the participants had at least 2 internships completed at the time they were interviewed, and they were with big companies like Tesla and Boeing, Kimberly-Clark, Emerson, these global companies. So the students already had a pretty solid wealth of knowledge from industry coming into their interviews. So the primary form of my data collection was really the interviews with the students, but I also interviewed faculty and staff as well, just to get some of that historical information. From the university perspective anyway. I also analyzed the program participation and graduation rates, as I mentioned earlier, that little bit of quantitative data that I included. Throughout the interview process, I did use open coding and analytic memoing to kind of capture my initial thoughts and those early themes that started standing out as I was talking to the students. And then after the interviews are completed, I utilized the Atlas TI program to code my transcripts, which I did several rounds of axial coding through that process just to get things better organized. And I ended up landing on 3 main codes or themes that emerged from the data collection process: curriculum activities, program logistics, and outcomes. Underneath each one of those, you'll see all of the subcodes that I listed as well. That was really just to kind of help better organize the data and give me that real specific level of organization that I was looking for. As far as ethical considerations go, my first stop was really to visit with the Vice President for Research here at Mines, Dr. Ralph Davis, and I explained the scope of my study and what I was intending to do to make sure that I didn't need to also apply to the School of Mines Institutional Review Board. Given the minimal risk to my participants, he didn't think that that was necessary, but he did provide a letter of support that I submitted to the Creighton IRB. And the big thing in there was that I wanted to make sure I had permission to use the university's name in my study, because Minds Advantage is so unique to the school that I wanted to make sure that association was kept intact. And then, so obviously, I've been working at this university for about 10 years, so it was pretty likely that I was going to know some of the students who would volunteer for my study. So I had to identify those potential biases related to my personal experiences with the students and my knowledge of the program, and really used reflexivity and bracketing to help identify those and remain objective throughout the data analysis process. I also made sure to maintain participant confidentiality. You'll note on the slides, I didn't use any student names or any other very specific identifiers. In my written dissertation, obviously, as well, I followed that format. And then lastly, I triangulated the data sources and followed up with participants to clarify, just to make sure that I accurately captured their thoughts and, gave them a chance to review their transcripts and all of that as well. So I'm going to first start off with a little bit of my quantitative data. As I mentioned earlier, the Minds Advantage program was established about a decade ago. And we've had a little over 2,300 students register for the program since the program first was established. But only 112 of them have actually completed 100% of the program's requirements. And you'll see the two tables that I have on this slide here. The active students were the students who were currently enrolled at the university and registered in the program at the time the data was pulled, which would have been the spring semester of this year. The archive students were students who had either graduated or they transferred, withdrew, whatever it might be. So they had not graduated, or excuse me, they were not currently enrolled in university. And you'll see here that the bulk of the students who registered for the program are in this 0% range, which really meant that they registered, but they never submitted any of their reflections or reported completing any of the activities. Now, that's not to say they didn't do the activities, but they just chose not to report them for whatever reason. So that's a pretty large group here at the bottom. See. The next piece of quantitative data that I wanted to point out here were the graduation rates. So I worked with the director of the Career and Professional Development Center to pull the participant information. And then I also worked with our director of institutional research to pull the graduation data as well. And he went back and helped figure out this information for the cohorts that started in the fall of 2010 through the fall of 2016. Because I was pulling data in the 2020 range, that would have given the students 4 to 5 years to graduate from that 2016 cohort there. And on average, the students who had some level of participation in the program, whether they completed 1% or 100% of the requirements, had an 85% eventual graduation rate versus 47% for students who had no level of participation at all. And our director of institutional research actually pointed out that that was the widest margin that he has seen among similar student activity reports in the entire time that he's worked here at Minds. So that was very interesting as well. And then the last thing too was this: for the students who did complete 100% of the program's requirements, they also had a 100% graduation rate as well. And excuse me, Dr. Winter had suggested that I do a chi-square test to really look at the comparison of the proportions of those students that participated in the program and whether or not they graduated. So, running that test obviously found a very significant relationship between participation and Minds Advantage and the graduation rates as well. Now, diving into the qualitative data, this is really the meat of my findings, I think, here. The strengths of the program really support the overall goal of Minds Advantage, which is teaching students how to be better people. And as our Career and Professional Development Center director said during his interview, there were actually many other strengths in the interviews, but the ones that I have listed here were really repeated most frequently. And a lot of them really, the students attributed these to being pushed out of their comfort zone as well. They know that they recognize that the program really helped them improve their communication skills, primarily their non-technical communication skills. The students really found the cultural and diversity experiences extremely educational. Community service opportunities were also something the students talked a lot about because we're very, I guess, community driven as most of the organizations on campus are, but a lot of them had those opportunities to do some service learning projects that they wouldn't have had outside of this program. Students also pointed out some leadership opportunities that came their way because of their participation in Minds Advantage. And they also regularly noted that the program was helping them develop those skills that really helped fulfill industry demands as well. And several students really talked about their the development of their emotional intelligence too, and how that is something that they wouldn't have gotten in the classroom really. And then lastly, the Minds Advantage program just in general really does support the university's vision and strategic goals. And really the mission of the school is to educate the next generation of leaders in science and engineering. So this program obviously hits that right on the head. I don't have quotes for all of the strengths that I listed, but these were a few that I really wanted to highlight here. One of the students said, when you go to an engineering school, it's really easy to get focused on being able to communicate technically, that sometimes you forget you're talking to other people and not everyone's going to be an engineer. So they really understand the importance of that non-technical communication development, because when they hit industry, they're going to be working with sales staff, human resources, marketing, all of those things. And they need to be able to communicate effectively on both ends of the spectrums in order to be successful in their own careers, but also to ensure the success of their companies as well. Another student, when we were talking about the diversity activities, she pointed out our campus is definitely male and definitely white. So I always enjoy hearing from the different perspectives. When you do get into industry, you're working with people from different backgrounds, and not everyone's going to be coming from the same perspective as you are. And a lot of the students who have worked for these large companies really noted how important that was. The former dean of students, so she had retired shortly after we finished her interviews after spending 21 years on this campus. And so she's seen this program develop really from the beginning. And she noted that when students graduate, if they have the skill sets above and beyond their peers, it'll allow them to advance in their industry quicker and will help them become strong community leaders as well. And then our university advisory board chair, who is an alumnus of the university and was also one of the consultants that they brought in to really establish this program, had pointed out that employers lose the graduates' first year of productivity if they have to invest in any professional development training. So Minds Advantage really helps them learn how to positively contribute not only to their companies, but to their communities and just society in general. Now for some of the challenges that the program faces right now. And again, the program is working well, but these are just a few of the things that could be enhanced, I guess. Marketing to students is really a big issue. From the interviews that I've conducted with the students here, a lot of them noted that they heard a lot about the program at orientation and in their dorms as freshmen, and then it kind of trailed off after that. So part of me thinks, that big group of students that registered for the program, but then didn't submit anything afterwards, that could have been some of the issue there, is that they just kind of forgot about it because they weren't hearing about Minds Advantage beyond, the beginning of their career here. Lack of support from faculty and staff has also been an issue. With one of the faculty members that I had interviewed who had been here for a really long time, he noted that some faculty believe that this program kind of takes away from the time students should be spending on their studies. And I don't think that they're really getting that benefit from it. So, reflection requirements was also an issue that was brought up several times. Students are required to submit reflections after completing each activity, but the program that they use to actually submit them is not very user-friendly. And that's also the same software that makes it difficult for staff to pull reports as well. That issue might be resolved when the university's contract with that particular program expires here soon, and we'll be switching to a new program, I think, for FY23. So that issue could be taken care of soon. As far as milestone recognition goes, the students all receive different gifts when they hit different milestones and throughout the program, when they are at like 25% completion, 50%, 75%, and then 100. But the actual tangible gifts that they get aren't really appealing to them. So there were a lot of discussions about what could we do instead of getting business cards, so we talked through some of those ideas as well. The big issue on our campus, I guess, or one of the bigger issues, is that we have a lack of diversity in the student population just in general, in the university as a whole. 81% of our student body is white and 75% is male. So we don't really have a lot of students to really engage with from those different backgrounds. It's a very small pool to work with here. And again, a few key quotes to hit on some of those challenges. You know, when it came to marketing, as I mentioned, one of the students noted out that maybe the narrative is the issue. It's not being communicated to students properly, so they're not seeing that inherent benefit in it. But also on the marketing aspect too, we need to make sure that we're marketing it appropriately to faculty and staff to improve that buy-in as well, and the company recruiters that come back to campus so that they understand the importance of the program and how it helps our students develop into better people just in general. On the diversity point, this is something interesting that I wanted to share, and I'm sure Dr. Wink would have asked about this if I didn't bring it up. During the interviews, I had 2 students who self-identified as being Native American. I did not ask for their cultural backgrounds or anything like that, but they brought it up. The students who did not identify as a minority were very complimentary of the program's diversity activities and found them very educational. But the 2 students who identified as Native Americans were not necessarily impressed with that. And so one of the students had actually suggested that we add some sensitivity training to the cultural and diversity curriculum activities, which I thought was a great suggestion as well. And then I also had another student who pointed out that we need to remember diversity comes in many forms and it's not just cultural backgrounds. So we need to think about, for example, the LGBTQ plus community, students with disabilities, and so on and so forth there. So on the lack of faculty and staff support side of things, our former Dean of Students noted that the President and Provost really need to become advocates for Minds Advantage going forward. Otherwise, it'll be really difficult to get that, additional buy-in from faculty and staff across campus. And right now, it's not, the President and Provost do see the benefit of the program. It just hasn't fallen under their wheelhouse in the past. The university is, after the former Dean of Students retired, the university reorganized, and now student development falls under academic affairs, which is the provost area. So now it's a little more directly related to their objectives. So that support definitely needs to be there from the top down for sure. And then lastly, on the reflection side of things, one of the faculty members I interviewed had pointed out that we don't teach students how to properly reflect here at Minds. And as a science and engineering school, I totally get that. And I can attest to my personal struggle with reflection, having graduated from the School of Mines with my undergraduate degree, and then coming to a school like Creighton that really focuses on that reflective journey. So I understand that struggle for sure. But when we kind of force our students out of their comfort zones and make them look a little inward, it kind of they see that growth. So some recommendations on what we could do moving forward. The program in general is working well in its current structure. And these are just some of the components that I think the university should continue doing as the program stands right now. Ensuring that Minds Advantage continues to have that wide variety of activities under each of the core competency areas is really important because it allows students to kind of pick and choose what meets their specific needs. Continue with the cultural diversity and global inclusion activities as well. Obviously, continue soliciting feedback from employers who recruit our students to make sure that we're meeting those industry demands as they evolve over time. We also need to maintain that partnership with the university's Professional Development Institute, which is actually a student-run organization that focuses on developing leadership development opportunities for other students. And a lot of what they do is very complementary to the Minds Advantage program as well. We need to continue providing opportunities for students to learn and practice non-technical communication. As I said, they get that really technical component in the classroom. So Minds Advantage gives them an opportunity to practice the non-technical side of things outside of the classroom. Also, I think it's important to continue introducing the program at orientation and in the dorm so that the new students are hearing it early and hearing it often and keeping it kind of at the front of their mind there. And then another thing that I think the program should continue doing is recognizing the students who complete 100% of the program in the Spring Leadership Awards reception, because that kind of gives it that, a little bit of prestige and hopefully that's a tangible incentive that students will actually enjoy. And lastly, we need to continue providing quality opportunities for students to participate in the service learning activities as well. As far as making some changes, I think the first step really needs to be the provost establishing a steering committee that includes people from student development and marketing, representatives from the different complementary programs on campus, faculty members, and student representatives. And really, I would charge that committee with reviewing and adjusting the curriculum requirements. For example, in terms of curriculum, the cultural sensitivity training that the one student suggested, I thought would be a fantastic idea. And another idea is adding some more entrepreneurial based activities in the career preparation area. We have a lot of students that are very entrepreneurial minded here. So I think that would be a very key item to add underneath the curriculum as well. Evaluate the staffing needs and management of program logistics as well. Right now, the program is managed by the Career and Professional Development Center, which is, a good fit, but given the restructure of student development falling under academic affairs, is it better suited under student success, for example? And I'm not saying that it is, but I think that discussion needs to happen. And then for some program logistics, one of the things that I thought would be fantastic for the students to complete as part of this program is very early on when they first register for it is to create their own leadership development plan to kind of see where they want to go throughout this program. And then at the end, their last requirement could be submitting a short paper on leadership theory and practice and include their own personal leadership philosophy. So you can kind of see the growth that they've had over the course of the program as well. Excuse me. And then develop a comprehensive marketing plan. As I mentioned earlier, we need to make sure we're targeting freshman students, but we also need to ensure that we're hitting them through their entire time at Mind so that they continue to complete activities and submit their reflections and so on and so forth. And then an annual review cycle would be very beneficial to make sure that we're continuing to meet the needs of our students, the university, as well as industry. Okay, how am I doing on time here? So I'm not going to read through all of these phases here, but essentially, once a committee is established, I really think that they could, over the course of an academic year, make some adjustments to the program and have all of those changes implemented in time to launch a refreshed Minds Advantage program by the next academic year. Assuming that the committee gets established in the near future, that is. Very quickly going to go through some implications on the practical side of things. This study has provided, the study aims to provide an improved experience that attracts more students to participate in and actually complete the Minds Advantage program. I also want to make sure we're heightening the program's level of prestige and improve its reputation amongst faculty, staff, and employers. And also make sure that the program continues to support the university's strategic goals as well. As far as future research goes, there's so many different routes that you could go from here, but I just listed a couple of examples for a quantitative analysis of student engagement in the program with a larger sample, explore experiences of underrepresented students specifically in the program, and that was something that I was initially interested in here, but I kind of took a broader scope with my study at first. Also investigate broader student experiences on campus just to determine what else contributes to their professional development. And then lastly, for implications for leadership theory and practice, my study really provides clear evidence that co-curricular leadership development opportunities help students become well-rounded professionals. And the structure of the program that we have here specifically is very good at teaching the students valuable skills and meaningful hands-on activities that are really most effective for STEM students. In conclusion, I guess the short summary is the program is really working well. The students do believe it's effectively aiding in their leadership development. However, if we implemented some of the recommendations that I noted herein, would really help enhance the program and ensure that our students have an even bigger advantage over their peers when they hit industry. And then the last thing that I have here, that's my dog Bandit, by the way. He was my emotional support animal throughout this whole process. First off, I really want to thank my dissertation committee members, Dr. Kate Winter and Dr. Joan Wake. You both have been fantastic throughout this process, and I couldn't be more grateful for your expert guidance and support. Next, I really want to thank the Creighton University faculty, staff, and my classmates, several of whom are on today. Individually, you've all impacted me in so many different ways, but collectively, you've shaped a really life-changing experience. So thank you all for that. Next, I really need to thank my South Dakota Mines family here, not only the staff, faculty, and students that participated in my study, but my colleagues and my supervisors, both past and present, for walking this journey with me as well. And last, and I'm going to be really brief because otherwise I might start crying. Thanks to my family and friends for your continuous love and support, because I definitely wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all of you. Okay, now I'm going to stop before I cry. So happy to take any questions now you may have.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. It's very hard to do a round of applause remotely, but I will clap on behalf of everyone who can't get unmuted. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. And we've had a few folks posting comments and well wishes in the chat, but for those of you who are available, do people have questions they would like to ask? If you've got your camera on, I can see you, but otherwise, if you could raise your virtual hand and be called on, that would be wonderful.
Don't all ask at once. I'm totally fine if you don't have any other questions. I'm okay with that.
I have a question for you, Jade.
Okay.
I'm for those others of you who are on here, I'm a faculty member in the program. So my questions are very broad. You have a very comprehensively designed study and you had a great group of people to participate, and then reported the findings clearly. So you've been working in this area for a long time. I mean, as in years, not months, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
10 years. Yeah.
Okay. So given your experience with the program and the area, what surprised you about what you found, if anything?
I think that one of the things that really surprised me, and I kind of touched on this earlier, were the cultural and diversity activities. I obviously see the types of activities that the program has that falls under that curriculum. Just being around campus all the time. But the fact that I got basically 8 of my students saying the university is doing a great job at providing diversity experiences for us, and then I had 2 students who said, well, it could be better. That was very interesting to me, because I've always thought that the university does a great job at kind of promoting dialogue with people that have different perspectives. But to hear the students who, for lack of a better term, are in the minority, say you could do better. That was really surprising to me. So, and having, I graduated from Mines too, and was obviously in the minority as well. And, I didn't have the experiences that some of my students had that I interviewed. And so I found that really eye-opening as well.
That's sadly not surprising, I suppose.
Right. Yeah.
So the other thing that you commented about was potentially moving this from an academic affairs / curriculum / faculty side to student affairs. Can you tell me more about that consideration?
So actually it's the other way around. Before the former dean of students retired, student development was its own area there. And after she retired, that position wasn't filled as it stood in the past. And it was kind of, I don't want to say downgraded, but it was to an associate vice president position / dean of students. And so when that change was made, they rolled under the student development area underneath academic affairs. So now that person reports to the provost instead of being their own, boss there. So it's a little bit of a transition, and it's something that I think our executive council members are really trying to still kind of work through some of that planning, but it really kind of, it all falls together. It all relates to student success, whether it's inside the classroom or outside of the classroom. So to make sure that the program continues, I guess, the provost needs to make sure that that remains a priority, that type of development.
I see. I didn't follow that as you presented. Yeah. Okay, that's an interesting organizational issue for a higher ed institution. So thank you.
Yeah, it's different for sure, and I think we're still working out some of those kinks as we're going along.
Thank you.
We've had a question come through the chat from Tyler Arzt. Very well done, Jade. What are some short-term initiatives that you can implement with your role to enhance personal and professional growth and stewardship?
Oh, that's a loaded question, Tyler. Thanks. Actually, I think some of it's already kind of rolling for me. For those of you who don't know, I actually transitioned into the chief of staff position in mid-August. So I'm in a new role here with a higher level of responsibility, obviously. And so really my job is to ensure the university is successful in any way, shape, or form that I can. Leadership development has obviously been very important to me over the course of my educational career, but just in general. And I think that the first thing that I can do is really just be an advocate for this program to continue and offer my assistance in helping the provost specifically kind of figure out a plan of what we do going forward with this program. So that's I would say my first short-term goal is to get this committee established so I can just like get rolling with it.
I got a quick comment more than anything. Did you happen to interact any with AJ Lauer while she was in the program? So her study was a lot in a similar way, but in an industry setting. And she did a big survey, but she's really heavily involved in women and minorities in STEM type work, and she might be a good connection for you.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so I'll send me a note if you get a chance, and
Okay.
I'll connect the two of you.
Okay, I'm gonna make a note to myself so I don't forget to send you a note. Did you say AJ Lauer was the name?
Yep.
Okay, thank you,
Right.
Dr. Warren. Any other questions?
Well, as you might guess, Jade, I have a question for us. I'm Joan Wake. I'm a member on the committee, and terrific work. It's been a joy to work with you. It really has been. I'm interested in connections, and I can't help but see some real connections from the early part of your work till your chapter 4. Well, and I wanted to ask you, the competencies of Minds Advantage. Remember when we first met and we first started talking about this, we looked at those core competencies. Do you remember anything particular about that as we talked?
Oh, gosh.
It's okay not to remember.
We've had so many discussions, I can't keep them straight.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, what's interesting to me is I reviewed those again the last week, and I could see such a connection to a couple of different things. The data provided by students in your chapter 4, I thought, holy cow, look at that. The students are saying exactly what those core competencies are. And also some of your data of the positive aspects connect so beautifully to the 4 goals of your university. There's just tight connections throughout. And I was just curious to know if you noticed any of that as you were working on your chapter 4.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was, sorry.
It's just amazing to me.
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't have a lot of time to go too in depth on the university's strategic goals in my presentation, but as Dr. Wink pointed out, there's definitely the connections there. And really the 4 goals that the university focuses on is academic and co-curricular excellence, research and innovation, outreach and engagement, and campus culture. And many of the activities that fall under Minds Advantage hit every single one of those areas there.
Yeah. And the connections to the student success connect so beautifully with the core competencies, which speak well of the core competencies, I think. Anyway, I was just really intrigued with that as I, reread it again. Anything else?
I'll give you a little bit of background information too on kind of the development of this program. Also that I didn't have time to cover in my presentation, but when I was an undergrad here, we had a program called STEPS, which stood for Students Emerging as Professionals. And it had the same general concept where we're trying to get our students to be well-rounded professionals when they graduate, right? That program wasn't as structured as the Minds Advantage program was. So this is kind of really a relaunch of that idea. that happened. And when they pulled in several outside people to help us, kind of outline the curriculum and develop what this program was actually going to look like, I think they had great input from industry, from alumni specifically, and even non-alumni, I guess, and also from faculty and staff on campus who really understood that student development piece of it as well. Any other questions? Really excited to see so many of my classmates on here today. I know Vanud has his defense next week, so I'm sure your final stages of preparation as well. All right, well, you guys took it easy on me. I feel like I was freaking out for no reason.
On that note, one more question. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. But I am curious, based on the triangulation of your data, were there any points of data from different perspectives, like a faculty interview or a staff interview, where you found the data really just was like, is this the same program? And was there anything that the student perspective just didn't really sound like what the faculty perspective, or was everything pretty much in alignment and clearly describing the same thing?
I think it was pretty well aligned, honestly. There were some things, obviously the faculty and staff perspectives were just a little bit different from what the students were conveying. Because the faculty and staff side, again, we're kind of approaching it from the, how is this supporting the university's strategic goals? And then the staff who interact directly with the program or oversee the program and manage those logistics kind of maybe expressed a little more specific frustrations in regards to like the software that they use for reporting and reading student reflections and things. So they were saying things that aligned, but were on the kind of the other end of the spectrum there.
Very interesting. Thank you.
I'm so interested to see what happens next year.
Me too.
with this program.
Me too.
Do you know the future, Jade? Can you tell us? The
I
future?
wish I did.
Yeah.
I wish I did. In some of these discussions, as I mentioned earlier, the provost kind of taking the reins on this area now, is these discussions have already been happening. There just hasn't been anything formalized yet. I think they recognize the need to address some of the questions that I brought up, but they just haven't really been formalized at this point anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure they'll pay attention.
I sure hope so.
I think so.
Wonderful. Well, as your chair, I would like to thank you again for this wonderful presentation. Thank all of you for attending and for engaging with Jade as she completes this milestone. Yes, we got to get all the love in the virtual space. But this has really been an amazing journey. And like Dr. Wink said, thank you so much for having both of us on this journey with you, because this has been a wonderful experience. I've learned so much from you and from your research. So I want to thank you very much for having me part of this. And I guess with that, we can release everybody and